Hello, hello, hello. This is Misty Magdalena Grace with the new and improved version of Healthy and Wealthy and Wise, where we talk about spirituality, psychedelics, plant medicine, microdosing, and really that journey within to finding your best innate wisdom, to your best health, your best wealth through all sorts of inner child healing, trauma release, grief recovery, overcoming addictions, and working with the mind, the body, and spirit. So go ahead, leave a review, subscribe, download. We look forward to your feedback. Thanks for tuning in today. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It is still Suicide Awareness Month. If you are tuning in, it is September 11th, which is a whole nother conversation. I just want to, honor that day for a moment, just to, pay reverence to those who may have lost people to 9/11 here in America. And I know we have people tuning in from all over the world who know about this day. And, we're talking about some heavy conversations, but we're going to try to make it light here because I have the mental health comedian with me. And we actually talked about this yesterday with Amy Aarons about live, laugh, love. And she had lost her mom to suicide, and how we're wanting to make an impact, a lot of these heavy topics, even 9/11 as an example. We don't have to go into a downward spiral about it, of course, unless it's necessary, it's warranted, and you choose to at that moment in time. This is about hope and healing on the podcast this month, and to provide perspective, and to be able to provide maybe some encouragement in different facets with every guest this month. So today I'm super excited, although it looks like we lost him for just a moment. If you just joined us for the first time, my name is Magdalena Grace. This is my Healthy and Wealthy and Wise podcast, and we are launching a new nonprofit and this month, and focusing on the Lotus Throne Sanctuary, which you'll hear about that later. But I see Frank is back. Welcome back, Frank. So I'm gonna.
What did I say? Was it something
you
I
wanted,
said?
Yeah, right. You just wanted to make an entrance, is what you did. That was apropos. So Frank is not new to my show, so I'm just going to dive right in, because if you've been following me for a while, we don't need to go through the whole song and dance introduction. Frank King is a suicide prevention speaker. He was also a writer for The Tonight Show for 20 years and a stand-up comedian. So you're like, wait a minute. What does this guy have to do with suicide? Well, he has himself personally battled depression and chronic suicidality through his life. So he turned that whole experience into not one, not two, but 12 TEDx Talks on mental health awareness. So I couldn't have my 5th annual Suicide Awareness Month focus on my podcast without you, Frank. So thank you so much. I know you have a family history of depression and suicide, and you face suicidal thoughts more times than you can count. So we're just so honored to have you here, alive and well, and funny, and always making an entrance. So thank you for being here.
You are welcome. When I say I'm happy to be here, I am happy to be here. It occurred to me that my personal mantra is this: you take your pain, when it comes to speaking, you take your pain and turn it into passion, your passion into purpose, and your purpose into profit as a speaker. And that's how I coach my students, my speaking students. Is everybody I work with, they want to make a living, but they also want to make a difference some way, somehow in people's lives. And TEDx, it's an idea we're spreading, but at the heart of it is they want to improve the lives of as many people globally as possible, because anybody with an internet connection can watch a TEDx. That's why they're very particular about the topic and the learning objectives. What are the takeaways? What's the next logical thing for these people around the world to do once you've taught them something? So it's all about impact. And I do believe I found my purpose in speaking on suicide prevention. And I think I'm a good choice, a couple of reasons. One is, if you think about it, the world's first comedian was a court jester, and the court jester's job, you probably know this, was to speak truth to power on behalf of the powerless with humor. And I believe I speak truth to the power of mental illness on behalf of those often powerless in its grip with humor. I believe where there's humor, there's hope. Where there's laughter, there's life. Nobody really dies laughing. And as you mentioned, it runs in my family. It's called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I screamed for days. And I myself came very close in 2010 after a bankruptcy. And I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like, literally. Funny story. A friend of mine had never heard me speak. And he heard me say, I didn't pull the trigger. And he came up afterwards and he goes, "Hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" I said, "Hey, man, can you try to sound a little less disappointed?" So, because people ask me, where's the funny humor? Where's the jokes in suicide? There's no joke. It's not a joking matter, but there are personal funny anecdotes like that. They call it comic relief for a reason. There's a psychological principle behind it. If you tell somebody something serious and then you leaven that with some well-placed, organic, tasteful humor, their brain is much better prepared for the next piece of serious business. Because it's not just death, dying, mortality, morbidity. It's, more of an emotional ride. And I believe when you speak, and I speak, I try to move people emotionally from laughter to tears to laughter to tears. I think it was Maya Angelou who said, people won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Right. That's profound. And I thank you. That was amazing. I mean, we're only 6 minutes in, and I hope all of you are taking notes. I know we don't have any, at least right now, I don't see any live eyeballs on this show, but I do want to remind you, sharing is caring. If you see value in this show today and what we're talking about, please hit the share button. Frank has done 12 TEDx Talks. He's the epitome of the Mark Twain quote that is the focus of this month for me, and this whole focus on suicide, which is the most two important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. And I feel like if anybody could say that, you have, Frank. And however deep you want to go, you've already laid you've laid the groundwork. For you, having been in this family with mental health issues, depression, and suicide, and having gone there yourself and wanting to die, how did you choose life? Can you share with us the story behind that?
Oh, yes. It's terribly practical. My first 6 years out of college, I sold insurance. And when we filed bankruptcy, I was in charge of the finances, so I felt somewhat responsible. I mean, Goldman Sachs and the toxic mortgage, there was some other responsible parties in this. Yeah, I didn't cause the world to melt down financially, but I I was in charge of our world, so it was destroying my wife. And so I realized I had $1 million life insurance policy. And there's something in suicidality called burdensomeness. I felt like a burden. I felt like she would be better off without me, certainly better off financially. I was worth more dead than alive. $1 million. She'd be brokenhearted, but she'd no longer be broke. She could be restored financially beyond where she was previously. So I decided I was going to kill myself for the money. So I called my insurance agent because I had sold insurance and I knew every policy has at least a 2-year minimum suicide clause. Kill yourself in less than 2 months, kill yourself in fewer than 24 months, pays nothing. After 24 months, pays in full. So I called my agent. And as it turns out, I'd had the policy for 22 months. I had to wait 2 months to kill myself. Fortunately, I don't remember day 61 or 2 or 3, after 2 months had passed. I wasn't marking days off the calendar. My guess is because the bankruptcy went through, the phone call stopped, things got a little bit better, just enough so I could break the surface, take a deep breath. I don't even remember when I realized, wait, I could do it today. Because again, things got marginally better. And so it was nothing, it wasn't a religious experience or something. I just could not leave her brokenhearted and broke. So very practical reason why I didn't pull the trigger.
Amazing. Yeah, that's profound. Thank you for being so open, because I feel like, and then this is my next question for you, because I've lost 12 friends to suicide, and that was actually, I had hired you, but I had lost another friend to suicide, and I was like a wreck at that time. I don't even know if you know this, but it was 2 years ago. And so I was just like, what in the hell is going on? So since you've experienced it generationally, you've experienced it personally in a different capacity. I mean, you're still alive here to tell about the story. That there's a stigma. That there's this shame and guilt factor and this abandonment wound when someone dies by suicide and you're left behind. In my case, I took on my choice. No one said you needed to do this, but my own, whether you want to call it Christian values, upbringing, or whether you want to call it humanness, I took on a lot of guilt and shame and had a deep sense of abandonment, which I'm not going to go into what I discovered about that today, but how do people work around that, the shame, the guilt, and the abandonment components to live a healthy life beyond that experience? Do you have any wisdom?
Well, it's, as a survivor, there's survivor's guilt. There's, how come I didn't notice? Why didn't they tell me? Oftentimes I was going to have a beer with them and I had to pick up the kids from softball. So maybe if I'd gone by and had the beer with them, they'd still be alive. So there is that. And there's something in suicide work called postvention, where you go back into a company or a school where somebody died by suicide, and the postvention counselor reconstructs. Oftentimes, pretty much everybody involved has a piece of the puzzle, but nobody had all the pieces of the puzzle to see it coming. And so the counselor oftentimes builds the puzzle person by person. And then when you step back and look at the entire puzzle, it's obvious what was about to happen. She calls it the tyranny of hindsight. When you realize, if you put all the clues together, it was inevitable. So there is that. And that's important. That's important counseling, because almost in a situation like that, almost everybody has questions. Almost everybody has some survivor's guilt. Fear, feeling abandoned. Would have done anything for them if they just asked. Why didn't they say something? And they know I care so deeply about them. The question that often comes up is, why do they want to die? And my answer to that is, in most cases, people don't want to die. I didn't want to die. I just wanted to end the pain. And for most people, that is what they're after. I mean, there are cases where they seriously want to die, but most of us just simply want to end the pain. That's the only way we could figure out to make it stop.
And I'm going to ask you this question. This is kind of poignant based on what I've experienced also, is when you say the pain, would you say it's more mental, physical, or both?
Both, actually. I feel like when I'm in terribly depressed, it feels like somebody's got their hand wrapped around my heart and they're squeezing. So there's it's probably not happening physically, but it feels physically like somebody's just squeezing, my heart. So I would say, for me at least, it's mental and it's physical. And for me, depression is like strapping on a pair of lead-filled boots. It becomes harder and harder just to put one foot in front of the other. It's almost as if somebody turned the force of gravity up and turned the color and contrast in the world down. And my cycle is about 3 days. I go down for a day, flatten out second day, and come back up the third. So during that first day, it feels like somebody's turning up the force of gravity, and I'm having more and more difficulty just moving forward. By the third day, I can feel it beginning to ease up generally. So
this is fascinating. Thank you for that. And that's still ongoing for you, right? This is something you, I guess, manage or work through on a regular basis?
Yes, I used to say I fight depression, but that's a misnomer. Fight implies I can win. I can't win. It's in my DNA. It runs in my family. It's just part of our makeup. And so, fight implies I could win, and I can't win. I can lose and kill myself, or tie and stay alive. Kind of an uneasy truce, like North and South Korea. So what I say is I live with depression. And the way I visualize it when it happens, when the cycle begins. I've studied off and on a martial art called Aikido, and they call it a soft martial art because when somebody comes at you, you don't oppose them directly. You step offline and you blend with their energy as they're coming by.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to do with the depression. I picture myself getting on a surfboard and catching the wave of depression and going with the energy rather than opposing the energy, because it's a great deal of energy and it takes a lot more to try to, and fighting it is not going to make any difference. It's just going to, so I get on my surfboard knowing that in 72 hours the wave's going to break and I'll be back to flying level again. So that's helped me deal, and I try to use that energy because it's a great deal of energy. Try to use that energy to keep me moving forward and productive that day.
That's fascinating. I don't know this. I wasn't planning on asking this question, and I don't know that you don't have to have an answer for this. And I know you're a straight shooter, so all questions are on okay, right? I can ask you anything.
Anything. We have no secrets, you and I.
So part of what I discovered of like my 12 friends who committed suicide, my own journey, with suicidal ideation and the thoughts. So I personally believe that a lot of us who have depression, suicidal thoughts, I'm putting them in quotation marks because I'm sensitive to how people respond to the definition of that. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of us are empathic. So if you're a speaker, if you're a networker like me, if you're a mom, you're a wife, you have all of these waves of energies around you, and they're exponential right now, depending on what you believe about what's happening in the planet, the astrology. I don't care if you believe any of that shit. It's really happening for all of us. It's like, I see it on Facebook, people posting like, oh my God, I think my brain is broken. Like I'm in this trauma loop. I'm here to say that is semi-normal. It's just, you got to have support. You got to help. That's why we're talking as we are, because it's really important for people to know that you should not live in isolation. You should not think you're weird or bad or wrong for these thoughts or these experiences. So did you ever consider yourself an empath?
Oh, I think many people who live with, say, depression are more empathetic than people who are neurotypical. I believe of myself that I tend to feel others' pain more acutely, more sensitive to others' pain. I don't know if it's being a comedian, because I've had 2 aortic valve replacements, a double bypass, and a heart attack. And when I had my heart attack, I was in the woods with the dogs by myself. I had my cell phone, but I had T-Mobile, so I didn't have cell service. So I had to walk out of the woods because I had to get the dogs back in the car, because if I hadn't, they would, the road that we came in on was very busy and it could have ended poorly. So I got the dogs back in the car. Anyway, long story short, I got to the hospital. And the great thing about having a heart attack is when you get to the hospital, there's no waiting. There's no taking a number, they roll you back into a little triage unit and start working on you. So I've always been about making others comfortable. Even if I'm experiencing the pain, I want them to be comfortable. So I'm entertaining as I'm having the heart attack. There's an expression: tragedy plus time equals comedy. The longer you do comedy, the shorter the time between the tragedy and the I'm doing comedy in real time, having a heart attack. The nurse said to me, Frank, look, no paperwork, obviously. You're having a heart attack. But I do have to ask you one question. Through the pain, I said, I'm married, honey, but I love the way you think. Starts laughing. She goes, no. Your full name is Frank Marshall King III, but we need to know, what do you like to be called? And through the pain, I said, Big Daddy. I'm trying to make her comfortable in the middle of my heart attack. So I think that's that extra empathy, that empathetic, you know what I mean? That I'm feeling their discomfort at my discomfort. They're concerned about me. And so I think, and for me, it's not just discomfort. I tend to on occasion tend to pick up vibes from other people. I was in a grocery store one time in La Jolla, where we lived, California, a suburb of San Diego. Guy just checked out, big guy, kind of beefy. He walked by me, and I mean, the asshole was coming off him in waves. I actually went, whoa, dear God. And I said to the cashier, who was that guy? And she said it was John Rocker, baseball player, famous for being in a New York subway and dropping racial epithets. I mean, just a really unpleasant, bad character. And I thought, well, I said, yeah, I got that just by walking by him. And I never had that, it been that visceral before. But I mean, it was coming off him in waves. So, yeah, I think perhaps, see, I believe, I have a whole TEDx talk on this. Mental with benefits, the evolutionary advantages of mental illness. And it starts like this. What if those of us living with a mental illness are not living with a genetic mutation, but an amazing evolutionary adaptation? And what if mental illness is, as Malcolm Gladwell says of such things in his book, David and Goliath, a desirable disadvantage? You never wish it on anybody. However, it can come with certain advantages. And what if we could convince a child that, yes, you have a mental illness, but you probably have some mental ableness your peers cannot touch? It would reframe it for the child, perhaps for their peers, reduce stigma, reduce bullying, and perhaps reduce youth suicide. That was the whole point of doing the talk, because I kept bumping into people who had a mental challenge, but they also had some other amazing ability. And I thought this cannot be a coincidence.
Oh, no.
And there is some research. And if you look around, there's the laundry list of people, famous, infamous, rich, whatever, that also, I mean, Elon Musk, for all his faults, a genius, probably living with bipolar disorder. Kanye West, politics aside, probably one of the musical geniuses of his generation, lives with bipolar. I believe my depression and thoughts of suicide are simply the flip side of my comedic ability, imagination, and creativity. Same brain, same wiring. How could it be otherwise? There's a reason when somebody heckles me that I can heckle back literally without thinking. I had a young woman at a comedy club one night, sitting down front, got really drunk, disrupted. They finally decided they had to throw her out. They walked her over to the door. I turned my gaze away from her to take the energy away from her and focus elsewhere. She gets to the door. She starts turning back toward me. I'm thinking, well, she probably heard something that sounded like her name, because drunks are voice activated. She says, screams, top of her lungs, F you! Without even thinking, I said, not even for practice. Standing ovation. People came up and said, how'd you think that up? I didn't think it. When you heard it, I heard it. I have no idea where that came from, but that's just the way I believe. That's the blessing that comes with a curse, that's all part of the same brain. How could it be otherwise? So, and I've often said, if somebody said to me, Frank, I got a pill, one pill. You take this, you'll never have another suicidal thought. You'll never be depressed again. What's the side effect? You will no longer think like a comedian. Okay, well, give it to somebody who's suffering far more than I am, because I'm not willing to trade. I'll deal with the downside to maintain the upside. So.
Yeah, I won't even go down. I totally agree with you. I'm not going to go down my tirade of what we've experienced, because my husband became a shaman. I saw him lose his mind and even die a couple times through his spiritual awakening. I believe the X-Men are real. My mom was a schizophrenic, but she was not. There's all of these gifts that mental health and mental illness. In today's world, it's changing, thankfully, and that's part of our message on the 21st when we have our event. We're going to share things we've never talked about publicly, so that's why I'm not sharing them now.
Yeah.
About the truth. In my belief, there's no such thing as mental illness. There's just a broken system that we've been having to kowtow to for maybe 100 or 200 or 300 years, with all of the things that that aren't really getting to the roots of it, and honoring the gift that you have is magical. It's not even, I don't even see it as a curse personally. If you don't have the right support, yes, it could
Yes.
be like my mother's definition of her illness was schizophrenia, right? Without the right support, yeah, that could be seen as a curse, but I see it very differently now. So now I have one more question before we talk about your passion, your purpose, and how
Yeah.
you help people as with suicidal thoughts. If there's someone listening right now, because I shared with you before we hopped on the show that more people are having them. It's like in the collective. What happens, or what do you recommend they consider if they have one?
Well, and by the way, in my TEDx talk on mental health benefits, one of my lines is, if you can get, one of my lines is, I'm not broken. I was made this way. So if you can convince a child they're not broken, they were made that way. There's a reason they are the way they are. If you can treat best you can whatever the mental disability is, and then wrap your arms around, embrace, and energize the mental ability. Focus on that as opposed to the other. So,
Yeah, beautiful.
I would say if you're struggling with depression, say thoughts of suicide, my standard advice is a mental evaluation. I mean, what does a therapist think? Clinician, psychiatrist, what do they think is going on? Keep this in mind. There was a time before the 1920s where the idea behind psychotherapy, psychology, was to treat the soul, the root cause of whatever the problem was. Sometime in the 20s, apparently, it became a medical model, and it was about a diagnosis and a particular medication. And it's gotten worse because people are labeled with, like you said, like schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, in part because to have insurance reimburse the physician for the treatment, you have to have a code. And there's a code for depression, a code for schizoaffective disorder. I mean, you have to have, that has to be a code, has to be coded. Otherwise, you're not going to get, the professional is not going to get a check for treating you. So we've gone from treating the soul in the 20s to just throwing medication at it. And, I believe medication oftentimes warranted. Sometimes it will keep people alive long enough for us to help with the damage to the soul. If it's a matter of life or death, then I take a small amount of medication. I'm not advocating it or saying don't do it, but it's important. So I would say an evaluation. If medication is indicated, I would take the medication. However, I saw a documentary, two women did a documentary on psychotropics. And in their research, they discovered that about 1/3 of people react really well to a particular medication. 1/3 of people, meh. The other third, So
yeah, it could end in suicide, actually, because that was of my 12, at least 4 of them. It was antidepressant or anxiety med related, along with obviously other extenuating factors. But it was the shift in the medication that left them lost and not thinking clearly.
And so if my medication, the one I take, hadn't worked right off the bat, and I didn't take it till I was 60, and then after 3 weeks, my wife noticed the difference in my personality in 2 weeks, but didn't say anything. Just wanted to wait and see what I thought. At 3 weeks, I had this thought, first time since I was 18. I like my life. What? I've got a good life. I mean, a lovely wife, house, 2 dogs, 7 cats. I mean, good, do what I love for a living. But I hadn't had that particular thought since I was 18. And my second thought was, why did I wait so long to take a little bit of that antidepressant? However, if it had not worked like that, there's a DNA cheek swab test, like Ancestry, where they'll take your DNA and they'll try to match it to the psychotropic medication that best works with your metabolism. So
good. Beautiful.
It narrows the list down to a very short, because, let's face it, the doctor knows about the medications what the drug salesman told them.
Yep.
My pharmacist knows more. As a matter of fact, when I went in to see my doctor for my physical at 60, and my wife said, just ask him about an antidepressant. So I thought, okay, why not? I'm 60. So I went in and we did the physical, and he goes, anything else? I go, yeah, I need some antidepressants. And he goes, why? I said, because I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. And he could not write the script fast enough. Now, what he had overlooked was your physician is supposed to say to you when you see them every time, there are two gateway questions. I can't remember what the first one is, but the second one is, have you felt hopeless in the last 2 weeks? And if you answer yes to one of those two, they're supposed to ask you 7 follow-up questions. But he had never asked me any of that.
Wow.
So this came out of the blue for him. So I went to see my pharmacist to get my meds. I handed him my script. He took one look at it and he goes, have you been feeling hopeless in the last 2 weeks? He asked a question the physician should have asked. So God bless him because he knew exactly what it was and what it was for, and we were friends. And anyway, so I think A, an evaluation. B, if medication is indicated, but be careful because not everything works for everybody. And suicide can be a side effect. And even sometimes when it's not a side effect of that particular medication, sometimes if people are wretchedly depressed and take an antidepressant, they get up just enough gumption to kill themselves. Ironically.
I know, right?
Yeah. So evaluation, medication, get a physical, head to toe, blood work, check your hormone levels. I had a friend in Eugene who was terribly depressed. He went to see a doctor. Doctor did blood work. His iron was low. They discovered his body was not metabolizing iron properly. So they put him on a slow iron, time release iron supplement.
Yeah.
Depression disappeared. So sometimes physical ailments can present as mental health challenges. So that's my stock advice. Evaluation, medication, and a physical to make sure it's not something organic in your body that's presenting as a mental health issue.
Awesome. I'm so glad you shared that, because part of, and you don't even know this because there's only so much time, and this isn't about me so much as that, like me and my husband, we specialize in mind, body, spirit medicine with our nonprofit and building a network of people with mental, physical, spiritual health benefits, if you will, inside of their repertoire. We believe that if you heal the mental health through physical and spiritual cleansing, it's a trifecta. Then your mind can be more at ease, and all of the suicidal thoughts and a lot of the other minutia can dissipate or dissolve. And so 100% that physical component, the neurotransmitters, all of it is really important. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And part of what I want to mention just really quickly before I go on, part of our vision is to help break the generational cycles of addiction. And you've experienced that, Frank, in your family, addiction and suicide, and be the change we want to see in the world by opening people's hearts and minds to the topics of suicide and addiction. Because I know for me, I was ashamed and I just didn't talk about it. I just swept it under the rug because there's just so much stigma, and to give hope and healing. So I just want to reiterate that for those of you who are watching and who are curious about the movement that we're creating, that definition of hope and healing and getting to the root cause. Because I mean, how sad is it to think that someone simply just had a vitamin D deficiency, as simple as that, and yet they took their own life. And I don't know that you can prove that or whatever, but just think how simple it is to be able to heal that. So thank you, Frank, for giving that bit of advice.
Well, and I believe in a holistic approach to my mental challenges. I have a self-care plan. I recommend everybody have one, whether you're neurotypical or neurodiverse. I realized during the pandemic, when I got together with some of my mentally ill friends, that we were well positioned to survive the pandemic because we all had self-care plans. We wake up in a world that's uncertain every day, whether there's a pandemic or not. We have to figure out a way to get out of bed. And the self-care plan is a big piece of that. And so I think it should be holistic. In America, unfortunately, a lot of times it's just give me a pill. My plan is very simple, and this is my takeaway when I speak. The takeaway for the audience. I encourage them to have a self-care plan, and I give them my diet. I'm on the keto diet because I know I'm carbohydrate sensitive. If I've got a friend who can eat a candy bar and drink a Mountain Dew, and his blood sugar probably stays right where it's supposed to be. If I do that, 30 minutes later, I'm face down asleep in a pool of my own saliva. So I do the keto diet because it's very low in carbs. So diet, exercise, that's my non-negotiable. I think in your self-care plan, you should always have one non-negotiable, something you're going to do every day, whether you do anything else at all. I work out 6 days a week. I'm actually a master's bodybuilder, 60 and over. I just did my 5th contest. That's part of my, my self-care is that having that avocation is very different from my vocation. So diet, exercise, good night's sleep. People, maybe it's not, maybe it's the modern world, maybe it's just in America, but they brag about how I can get by on 3 hours sleep a night. Stop. Brag about how you got 8 hours. So diet, exercise, good night's sleep, meditation, twice a day, guided meditation called the cat napper, takes me down, brings me back up, lowers cortisol, blood pressure, raises DHEA. Just, it's like back in the day. Remember computers back in the day in the 90s? Well, just unplug it and plug it back in. That's kind of what you're doing. It's a manual reset. So diet, exercise, good night's sleep, meditation, medication, and diet, exercise, meditation, medication. Diet, exercise, meditation, medication. What was the 5th one? Diet, exercise, meditation, medication. There's a 5th one there somewhere. It'll come to you. And diet, exercise, good night's sleep, meditation. That's 5. That's 5. And also gamification. You make a game out of whatever it is you're attempting to do. For example, if you're having trouble getting out of bed, not physically, but mentally, I make a literal to-do list of 6 things on a piece of paper, on a pad. And the game is, once I scratch off number 6, I don't care if it's 3 in the afternoon, broad daylight, I can go back to bed and do what I've been wanting to do all day long, is crawl under the covers, bring up Netflix, and watch the next couple episodes of The Perfect Couple. Because that's what I want to do. So it's a
reward.
Game. Your reward. Yeah. So the 3rd leg of my stool is schedule. During the pandemic, there's a guy in the space shuttle. Space station. He'd been up there by himself for a year, except when they brought groceries up, he saw people. And they said to him, how in the world? I mean, that is definitely social isolation. How do you survive that? He said simply one word: schedule. Go to bed same time, get up same time, eat same time, Netflix same time, work out same time. I gave in to my circadian rhythms quite a while ago. I'm a comic. I thought I got to be a night person. No, I'm a radical morning person. I'm in bed between 6 and 7 every night. I'm up between 1 and 2. All I need is 6.5. That's exactly how many hours of sleep I need. So it's a scheduling thing. And first thing I do in the morning is work out, and then it goes on from there. But pretty much every very regimented, scheduled, something about that schedule. I tell my coaching clients, my speaker coaching clients, look, you have to control the things you can control. So that diet, exercise, good night's sleep, meditation, medication, all 5 of those things I can control. The rest of the world, I just have to I got to let it go because it's way above my pay grade. But those things I can control. So that's my holistic approach.
I love it. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And a lot of my clients, I work with them on sleep hygiene. That's the first place I start, and am not surprised when someone who's really stressed out and going through a lot of trauma loops, especially, that they're not sleeping what is right for them. So that's a great reminder. I wanted to close out on the quote that I have still on the screen. For those of you who are watching the visual, I want to encourage you to like, subscribe. Feel free to comment if you want, share this. I do this on YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live, and Facebook Live. And if you want to get the notifications for future guests, we have so many great ones coming up, and to see it on screen, I think, as you know, with comedy, granted, I suppose you could go to a comedy show and just listen to the audio, but
Yeah.
to be able to see it is a deeper connection. So the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. So kind of wrapping this up with a bow, or whatever you want to call it, a cherry on top for you. Obviously, you chose life.
Mm-hmm.
So grateful for you to do so, to share your story. And now you turned your pain into passion, into purpose, into profit. You have had 12 TEDx Talks successfully, and you're helping others with that. So share a little bit more about that.
Well, I do believe this is my purpose. People say to me, how'd you pick suicide as a topic to speak on? Well, the topic actually picked me. And probably my best speakers are the ones where whatever it is organic to them. They didn't just pluck it out of the air. And I believe I knew my purpose when I began speaking on suicide prevention. But what drove it home was I was in Billings, Montana after a presentation at the University of Montana. And I'm standing outside the venue waiting for the nice young man, the student with the truck, to come get me, take me back to my hotel. Okay, now picture this. It's dusk. I'm standing outside this building. It's starting to snow. And not far away, I can hear a river. And after my presentations, because I say, look, I'm going to do general Q&A, and then if you have a question you want to ask or a story you want to share, I'll hang out for another 30, 45 minutes, take them individually. And a young woman came up recently at college after I'd gotten done, said, thanks for the keynote. I said, you're welcome. And she said, but I got to tell you, it made me weep. How did it make you weep? She goes, your whole story about chronic suicidal ideation, I've had that all my life. I didn't know that had a name. I thought I was just some kind of freak and completely alone. And when I heard you say that on stage, that you have that, I realized for the first time in my life that I'm not alone, and I wept. So here I am standing outside the venue, snowing, river in the distance, sound of the rain, and it hit me. Oh, dear God. I am like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. I've been shown what these people's lives would be like if I were there simply to reassure them on these things. And if I took my life, then in theory, I could take a lot of those people with me. And it was at that moment I thought, oh, dear God, I'm stuck. I can't kill myself and take these people with me. So that was the moment that I realized that I knew it was my purpose, but that right there, that moment of inspiration where I realized what the impact was and what the impact would be if I just simply weren't there. So that's one of the things that keeps me alive, is that and my mother had difficulty getting pregnant, got pregnant twice, lost the baby almost immediately after birth twice, had the courage to try a third time. I was born, fourth time my sister was born. So I feel like she was so brave and worked so hard to bring me here that I need to be at least as brave and work at least as hard to stay here until my appointed time.
Amazing. Wow. So much I could add to that and share, but I want to just, is there any other thoughts that you want to share that is on your heart today, as we are in Suicide Awareness Month, and anything that you haven't shared that you feel is applicable?
Yes. There's a guy named Donald Miller who wrote a book called Build a Story Brand. And Donald Miller, in the case of a speaker, me, says that you need to make the audience the hero in the piece. So this is how I do that. I say to them, look, here's the good news. 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent, can't make up their mind. 9 out of 10 give hints in the last week leading up to an attempt, which means, here comes the empowering, you can make a difference. You can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as what we're doing right here. And that is having a conversation, if you know how. And before I leave here, you will know how.
Well, I do always want to close on a positive note, and all of this has been positive in my mind, to bring awareness, to help people have the ability to know that, hey, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, oh my gosh, we're on LinkedIn talking about suicide, right? And still smiling about it. And to me, it's all about, my friends have spoken to me from the great beyond and said, don't let my death be in vain. Please, keep healing yourselves, keep sharing, that this doesn't have to be difficult to talk about. Everyone talks about blood pressure issues or cancer like it's quote unquote normal, and none of those things are good either. I just want to share that, but to also be able to break the stigma and to help people understand that there's so much more, when you can open up the conversation. I know for me, having talked about this with so many people just in the past few months since we're launching this, and I'll talk about our event, and then I'll have a couple more closing thoughts for you, Frank. I'm surprised at how many people I'll mention it to, and all of a sudden it opens up a whole nother door. And I know you know this, Frank, because this probably happens to you every day, where someone will say, oh my gosh, I have lost a friend or a family member to suicide, but I never wanted to talk about it because it's just too painful, or it's just how do you talk about it? So Frank and I embodied that. We gave you an example, and I would encourage you, if you're in San Diego on the 21st of September, we're having an in-person first annual. I'm sure Frank will be there for second annual. I've been talking to him. You're on my radar. My plan is to have you next year, Frank, to be there to celebrate the lives of the people we lost, to celebrate. I know that sounds probably kind of weird. The conversation around this, and to break that stigma, and to be able to help bring hope, healing. So if you can attend in person, fantastic. If you're not in Southern California or you can't come here, we are going to live stream the event on Saturday, September 21st, from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific. So if you want to tap into magdalenagrace.com, that's where you'll actually see Frank's recording of this later. You'll also get to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and the venue is also going to be streaming it live. So there's 2 YouTube channels. So just to make it simple, if you just go to magdalenagrace.com, subscribe to my YouTube channel, or just go there and it'll say live stream for September 21st, just click on that. At 4 p.m. on that Saturday. You can attend anywhere in the world as long as you can figure out your time zone. And if not, you can, right, Frank? But otherwise, you can check it out on the back end. And our goal and our mission, of course, is to destigmatize it, to continue this kind of conversation, to bring hope, healing. We have amazing speakers. 2 of them have already been on the podcast this month. I'm going to be talking next Monday on my mom's anniversary of her birthday. She tried to kill herself multiple times. Otherwise, kind of like you, Frank, I'm alive because she wasn't successful. And so I've always taken my life very seriously, to know that I'm here for a purpose, to actually share what she couldn't, because of her quote unquote illness and her diagnoses, to be able to build this awareness and not to sweep it under the carpet or throw it into the institution and hide it because it's some scarlet letter type thing, because it's not. It's a legitimate conversation to be had. And so if you struggle with mental health and any of these suicidal thoughts, or even addiction, it's also Addiction Recovery Awareness Month. So I also found that out not too long ago. So it's a great time to build community of people who aren't going to judge you, that it's going to be a safe, sacred space with sound healing and a lot of great shares that will encourage you. So if you can attend live, great. If not, check out the website, lotusthronesanctuary.org. You can donate financially. You can just simply be aware of our future events. We'll have 5Ks next year. We're going to have annual events every September. And so it's just starting, just the humble beginnings of starting something much, much bigger. And Frank, you look like you were going to say something.
Yes, something I think you and I offer on that score, and I've said this many times, many different ways, but I believe Brene Brown said it best of herself, that you and I are so comfortable in our darkness that we can sit comfortably with you in yours.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. So on that note, since that was like a mic drop, oops, hello, sorry, that's my phone going off there. My phone was excited about what you had to say.
Wow.
Where can people find you? How can they follow you? And I'll put all of this in the show notes, whatever you say next.
Yes, mentalhealthcomedian.com, mentalhealthcomedian.com. You're welcome to put my cell number in the show notes. I put it up on the screen every time I speak, and I say to the audience, look, if you're suicidal, dial 988. If you're just having a bad day, call a crazy person. Here's my cell. And about once every couple of weeks, I get a call about themselves, about a loved one, just, So I always answer. People go, you're picking up the call. It says, it's from that guy, scam likely. Yeah, but see, what if it's somebody who's not scam likely, somebody who's got my number, who's struggling, not suicidal, but needs my help? So I pick up every call that comes to my phone on the off chance I'm going to miss somebody who really wanted to, needed my help.
Well, thank you for being there. Thank you for being a light in the darkness. Thank you for your story, for your time and your commitment to this amazing cause. Hopefully all of you who have attended here today have saw and experienced some value. I know I have in being able to be the lucky one who gets to interview you. Please hit the share button. Sharing is caring. You may just save a life at the very least. Hopefully just shifted a perspective for someone with all of the value that has been here today. We're going to have another interview on Friday with Mark Van Her. He's another repeat guest, just like Frank, who's been on my show before. This is my 5th annual Suicide Awareness Month podcast celebration, and just being able to help bring more awareness. So tune in. We're going to talk more about mental health on Friday. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, here's to your best health, your best wealth, and your best wisdom. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, download, leave a 5-star rating or review, and also please refer this to a friend you know who may benefit from this inspirational message. We hope to see you again. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel or join my Facebook community. And if you are looking to manifest your best health, your best wealth by trusting your best wisdom within, please go to my website, www.microdosingforhealth.com. Again, www.microdosingforhealth.com. To quiet your mind, get into your heart, heal your body, and manifest your best health.